By now, I guess enough had been said on the capability of DJI series of action camera. In my previous video, I showcased some of my extreme low light footages taken on the OSMO Action 4. Link to the video is on the top right hand corner. And here I will quickly go through the settings I use for these low light or extreme low light situations. Personally, I never use the low light image enhancement settings provided by the Action 4. It's renamed as Super Night mode in the Action 5 Pro. What it does is letting the camera have total control of all settings in low light situations. And the end result is quite disappointing in my opinion. Often colors are smudged, image is over sharpened, and the stabilization is also not as effective during this low light situation. I believe I had established the point that Action 4 and 5 Pro are impressive action camera. And they can also produce reasonably high quality low light footages. And the way to do it is to only record in 10-bit D-Log. Exposure wise, we knew that manual exposure for each individual lighting situation will yield the best desired result. But frankly, it's just not practical for me. Traveling with my family, I'm mostly a run and gun kind of shooter. So keeping a range of auto exposure preset worked really well for me. I will cut straight to the points on the preset I use for my low light footage, and I will explain it along the way. In my low light preset, I keep my shutter speed to 160 and auto ISO range from 100 to 800. And as mentioned, I only record in 10-bit D-Log, rock steady plus on. My color temperature will always remain at 5500, which is neutral for all my preset. Another adjustment which stay constant are sharpness and noise reduction, both at -1. This shutter speed and ISO range perform well most of the time if it's not too dark. Like this bad raining weather in Scotland, I keep the maximum ISO at 800 because I feel that anything above will produce a rather soft image. These settings serve well as the backbone of a low light preset. I can do minor adjustment on the fly depending on how dark the situation is. The reason I keep the shutter speed at 160 is because I find it to be a lower and yet comfortable shutter speed to avoid micro jitter for electronic stabilization. I'm assuming all my viewers understand the concept that the higher the shutter speed, the better the electronic stabilization perform. So when the lighting situation gets darker, I'll first adjust the shutter speed downwards, either at 120 or the lowest is 100. Remember, we need to maintain a certain shutter speed for the electronic stabilization to function properly. Even with these 3 shutter speed, I'm still doing the ninja walk to avoid any big camera movement, to eliminate as much micro jitter as possible. The lower the shutter speed, the higher margin of error for micro jitter.
Her thinks that she's not listening.
2 quick tips here. In a dim situation where there isn't much contrast of light, the micro jitter is less obvious since it's mainly visible on a higher contrast area. That's why in a way it's more forgiving when using a lower shutter speed in such a scenario.
Be careful, ah.
Another thing is, in extreme low light, I may disable electronic stabilization and stabilize in post using the gyro data provided. I think it stabilized better and somehow the image managed to retain more details as well. I only increased my ISO as the last resort. 800 is the highest safest ISO to retain better image quality. In my experiences, the next jump to 1600 is acceptable, but we often soften the image quality. If lighting situation permit, I will always avoid using 1600. That being said, 1600 can still produce some pretty decent low light footages. Try reducing or slowing down camera movement can improve the overall image sharpness at this ISO. Typically, I will avoid any panning and tilting of my shots. And always remember that it's okay to let your footage look darker. The last part will be post-grading. Frankly, this is a small sensor action camera after all. I think a certain amount of grading is still needed for the low light footage to look better. I will not be going into details of the workflow of my grading process here. If you ask me, getting exposure settings right to capture as much detail as possible already gets 70% of the job done, and the remaining 30% is grading, which is basically correcting and concealing of the flaws produced by the smaller sensor and presenting the footage in the way you like, which is subjective. I think some may even prefer or think that the original D-Log footage look good enough without any grading. And before ending this video, I'd like to mention that for static shot, whether the camera is on a tripod or I'm holding it, I never bother maintaining a minimum shutter speed. I mean, in some extreme cases, I even use 1/25 just to let in more light to keep the ISO as low as possible.